Welcome back to This Week in Bevy. This week we've got a bunch of new examples added to the repo, new additions to the standard material, and more. Out in the wider ecosystem, we'll see showcases such as 400,000 entities on a flow field, as well as new crates for networking, UI, and signals. On top of that, there are game updates from past Bevy jams, new card games, and more. So let's start off by talking about ClearCoats. A ClearCoat is a thin layer of clearish material on top of something else, often meant to protect the underlying material. In real life, this can mean a clear coat on top of canvas artwork, car paint, soda cans, or lacquer on wood. As part of this new PR, Bevy's standard material now supports a clear coat layer, including when imported from GLTF using extensions, such as when applying a clear coat in Blender. Bevy's standard material configuration includes the ability to modify the strength of the clear coat, the perceptual roughness, and a normal texture. Moving on, we've seen the Annulus or the torus before. This week, the Annulus primitive got gizmos, and the math render primitives example has been updated accordingly. For those that are curious, that looks like this in 2D and this in 3D. We've also got a couple of brand new examples. In this case, we show off how to load an asset using Bevy's asset server, both with and without sampler configuration, that results in textures being either repeated, as you can see on the left, or the default, filling the space allotted. The same author also offered up a new headless renderer example. This shows off how to use Bevy to render a scene and save it to a file without using a window. The example is a bit long, at about 500 lines, but there are comments detailing the more complicated bits, and it supports native as well as WASM applications. Amongst other refactorings, Bevy State was also created to encapsulate the newly expanded state infrastructure we talked about in the last couple weeks. The relevant code is now pulled out of the ECS crate into the Bevy State crate. If we take a hop over to the tracking issue for primitive shapes, we can see that it gains an implementation of extrusion for shapes. Now, fundamentally what this means is that implementations of .area and .perimeter have moved from the relative primitives, in this case we're looking at the triangle 2D, area and perimeter, onto implementations of the new measured 2D and measured 3D traits. In this case, we've got measured 2D for triangle 2D that has the same area and same perimeter that we saw earlier. 2D has area and perimeter, and 3D has area and volume. And with that, we'll jump straight into the showcases. This Shattered Pixel Dungeon main menu clone is on the left. The original you can see on the right. This author is remaking their rhythm game and, in their own words, starting to get the core mechanics down and really liking the workflow so far. Note that this demo does have audio, as it is a rhythm game, so you should definitely go check that out if you want to hear it. Bevy Reactor is a framework we've covered before for fine-grained reactivity in Bevy. This is a demo of a color picker widget implemented using Bevy Reactor, with a debug showing the reactor events on the left. This Bevy XPBD restitution test is oddly satisfying and reminds me of something that I might see on TikTok or YouTube Shorts associated with some sounds. The demo comes in two flavors, the small amount of balls and the large amount of balls, and this is experimenting with Bevy XPBD's new solver and sweep-based CCD, or continuous collision detection. And that brings us to CLRS v2.0. I pronounce this as colors. This game started as a Bevy Jam number 3 submission, and about a year later, 2.0 was released. There's a whole host of improvements here, including new graphics, smoother gameplay, difficulty settings, rebalanced gameplay, new UI, and better performance. Of course, that isn't surprising since the work on this has gone over the last year, and the original entry for the Bevy Game Jam was created in only 5 days. You can play it now on itch.io. Next up, we've got a ton of updates for this Bevy Bistro scene. The Bistro scene comes from the Amazon Lumberyard Bistro repo and is merged with a bunch of Bevy features, including lighting. The relevant assets are linked in the Discord thread as well as in the Git repo. Zoolitaire has now passed App Store review. Zoolitaire is a puzzle game that has seen a few releases since its first, and seems to be the driving motivation behind a bunch of the recent Bevy iOS integration crates that have been released in the last few weeks. The game now also includes an in-app purchase to unlock the full 100 levels after the first 23 demo levels. On to the next showcase. This is a few hours of Bevy. This is the author's first hours into their Bevy journey. You can see this little character walking around a tile-based map. And Slavic Castles is a card game, and this is a video generated to show off some of the progress on said card game. You can see clicking, dragging, scorekeeping, and hands. This next image is the first step towards a new crate called Bevy Wireframe. Bevy wireframe already has a GitHub repo and is trying to actively implement an algorithm from this paper linked in the repo. Next up, this voxel colony simulation game is one we've seen before, and now it has added crafting and building. The workbenches seen here are constructed from stone, slate, and cherry wood. And in the intro, I promised you 400,000 entities on a flowfield. It may not look like it yet, but this demo shows off 400,000 entities on a 1000 by 1000 flowfield. It doesn't use any compute shaders at all, so could be made even more performant than it already is. This image shows off some of the progress on Bevy Mesh Terrain Editor, which is an experimental editor targeted at supporting Bevy Mesh Terrain. This screenshot is what it looks like. This, as the author puts it, is a quick gameplay demo of the latest build. Jarl is a fantasy colony builder built with Bevy Magic Light 2D, and this is gameplay, as we said, shared from their latest build. I always get a kick out of how good the lighting system in this game looks, and I also love the little particle effects. Up next, we have an empire building game on a hex grid. This demo takes advantage of a number of crates in the ecosystem to build a hex-based empire building game. First off, Hex's latest feature, that's HEXX, allow for custom terrain mesh creation and improved piece movement. The terrain is also influenced by temperature and the presence of rain. Bevy Mod Outline powers every object's outline, while the camera is powered by Bevy RTS Camera. Bevy Mod Scripting powers an interface built on top of Bevy's own UI. As the author states, as for the game itself, the plan is to make a grand strategy game in the vein of CK3 and Total War, set in an early Bronze Age level fantasy world. This one is another demo that you'll have to go watch and listen to on your own. This is a visual programming and DSP playground. This YouTube video is definitely worth checking out, since this is, again, an audio-based demo. It's also worth noting that the source code for this one is available on GitHub. Roguelike Racing is a multiplayer turn-based RPG prototype that uses U for the UI and Bevy for the 3D games world. The UI and game world pass messages to communicate. The source for this one is also available over on GitHub. And that's it for the showcases, but we've also got some great new crates this week. With crate releases, we're starting off with Bevy Lunex. Bevy Lunex is a path, as in file path, based retained layout engine for Bevy entities. It's built around vanilla Bevy ECS. It is a library intended to replace the existing Bevy UI crate, but nothing is stopping you from using both of them at the same time. For the alpha release, a bunch of major changes have been made. The crate has been completely rewritten from scratch. It's now ECS friendly. It has 2D and 3D element support, a custom mod picking backend, uses events as callbacks for interactivity, and comes with 9 stackable UI units. This recreation of the Cyberpunk UI is one demo of the UI library, and the source code for that is available on GitHub. Next, we've got Bevy Replicon 0.25. Bevy Replicon is a crate for server authoritative networking. Notable for this release is a focus on supporting crates building on top of Bevy Replicon, such as Bevy Bundlication. Bundlication. Additionally, users can now define replication rules similar to queries. Bevy MIDI is our next crate to talk about. Bevy MIDI enables sending and receiving MIDI data to and from Bevy using DAWs or MIDI controllers. The actual update here is only an update to Bevy 0.13, but we haven't talked about this crate in a long time, and I think it's a fairly novel use of Bevy, although we may see more and more like this as Nanu gets further integrated. And for our last crate, I wanted to talk about Seldom Pixel 0.6. Seldom Pixel is a plugin for limited color palette pixel art games. The major change in 0.6 is the replacement of Bevy ECS tilemap integration with a built-in tilemap solution. And this week we've got one devlog, the Broken Spirit devlog, which is a short video detailing the state of Broken Spirit, an early stage RPG. And we've also got one educational post. This post shows off how the author processes texture atlases in Bevy. It covers loading a bunch of separate images using Bevy Asset Loader and then turning those into a texture atlas using Bevy's APIs. And of course, if you want a full overview, we've got a list of all the pull requests that were merged this week, as well as pull requests that were opened this week in need of review. Review is a great way to get involved with Bevy, even if you feel like you're not ready to author a PR yourself yet. And that's it for this week. I will see you in the next one. Have a great rest of your week,